Failure is one of those things we all experience, but too often people allow it to take over their identity. You lose a job and suddenly you say, "I'm a failure." You mess up in a relationship and you carry the weight of it like it's your entire story. But that's not the truth. Failure is something that happened. It's not who you are. God never said failure was final. Think about it. Every single person who has ever done something great in life had to go through failure to get there. You can't name one person who skipped it. Yet for some reason we treat our own failures like they're unique, like nobody else has ever fallen short. The truth is, your failure is not a label. It's an event. When God looks at you, He doesn't see the mistake you made last week, last month, or last year. He sees the potential He put inside you before you were born. That's why you can't let a bad chapter convince you the book is ruined. God is still writing. The problem is, we let failure stick to us like glue. We replay it in our minds. We let it whisper in our ears at night. We keep going back to the moment when things went wrong and letting it hold us hostage. That's not what God intends. You can't heal if you keep rehearsing the hurt. Failure is a teacher, not a name tag. It comes to show you where to adjust, where to grow, where to strengthen. It comes to remind you that you're human, but also that you're resilient. God didn't design you to stay down. He designed you to rise. Some people think that because they failed, they're no longer worthy of success. They believe that their dreams expired the moment they fell. That's a lie straight from the enemy. If you've got breath in your body, God still has purpose for you. So when failure comes, you've got to separate what happened from who you are. You are not defined by what went wrong. You are defined by what God has placed inside of you. And the power inside of you is far greater than the failure behind you. It's easy to look at other people's success and think they've never messed up. You see them smiling, thriving, building businesses, raising families, and you think they must have done everything right. But let me be real with you. Every single one of those people failed at something along the way. Nobody skips failure. The difference is some people learn how to get back up and others let failure keep them down. That's it. It's not that the successful never failed. It's that they refuse to let failure have the final word. That's what separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. Take a moment and think about your own life. How many times have you thought you'd never recover from something, only to look back now and realize you made it through? That wasn't by accident. That was God showing you that failure isn't fatal. Sometimes we elevate people so much that we forget they're just like us. They struggled, they doubted, they cried, they thought about quitting, but they pressed on anyway. That's why you can't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. If you knew the battles other people fought to get to where they are, you wouldn't be so hard on yourself. You'd realize you're not the only one who slipped, not the only one who stumbled, not the only one who thought about giving up. You'd see that failure is part of everyone's journey. And the beauty of it is, God never asked you to be perfect. He asked you to be faithful. Faithful enough to get back up. Faithful enough to try again. Faithful enough to believe that His grace covers what your effort couldn't. So don't count yourself out just because you've fallen short. You're in good company. Every champion you admire fell before they rose. Every leader you respect had to overcome failure. You're not behind. You're just in the middle of your process. God is not intimidated by your brokenness. He doesn't look at your life, see all the shattered pieces, and walk away. In fact, that's when He does His best work. Because while people see damage, God sees design. While people see ruins, God sees rebuilding. Think about a potter working with clay. The clay doesn't come perfect. It gets crushed, reshaped, pressed, and sometimes broken down again just to be rebuilt stronger. That's how God works with you. He takes your broken pieces and molds them into something better than before. Some of you feel like your life has been reduced to nothing but fragments. Broken dreams, broken trust, broken plans. You think you're too far gone, too messed up for God to use. But the truth is, The very thing you think disqualifies you is the material God uses to show His glory. When God takes broken pieces and puts them back together, He doesn't hide the cracks. He uses them as evidence of His power. Your scars become your testimony. What was meant to shame you becomes the story that frees someone else. You've got to stop thinking your brokenness is the end. It's the beginning of something new. It's proof that you survived what was supposed to destroy you. And if you're still here, that means God isn't finished yet. Sometimes you've got to hand those pieces over to Him and say, God, I don't know how to fix this, but I know you do. That's when He takes what you can't carry, what you can't rebuild, and creates something greater than what you lost. So don't hide your brokenness from God. Don't cover it up. Give it to Him, because He is the only one who can take a pile of broken pieces and turn it into a masterpiece. A lot of times, when life knocks you down, it feels like the end. You lose that job, you fail that test, that relationship falls apart, and it feels like you've hit rock bottom. But what you've got to understand is that your setback is not punishment, it's preparation. God is not taking from you, He's setting you up for something greater. You may think the setback was meant to destroy you, but in reality, it was meant to position you, because sometimes the place you thought you belonged is too small for what God has planned for you. And the only way He can move you forward is by shutting the door you were too comfortable standing behind. That closed door you're angry about, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. That opportunity that slipped out of your hands wasn't the only chance you had. It was God clearing the way for something better. If you could see what He's setting you up for, you'd thank Him for every no you ever received. The problem is, when we're in the middle of the setback, all we see is loss. All we feel is the sting of failure. We don't realize the story isn't finished yet. And that's exactly why you've got to hold on when everything in you wants to quit. A setup doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks like chaos. Sometimes it looks like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like doors slamming in your face. But behind the scenes, God is arranging the pieces, moving people, and preparing you for something you couldn't even imagine. If you give up in the middle of the setup, you'll never see the comeback. You'll never experience the blessing that was on the other side of your disappointment. That's why you've got to learn to trust God, even when it looks like everything is falling apart. Because what looks like failure to you is just the setup for a victory you didn't see coming. And when it happens, you'll realize every setback was a stepping stone that led you right where God wanted you to be. Shame is heavy. It doesn't just remind you of what you did, it chains you to it. Shame whispers in your ear, telling you you'll never recover, you'll never be enough, you'll never rise again. But you've got to understand this. Shame is not from God. God doesn't use shame to get your attention. He uses grace. Grace lifts you, restores you, and gives you another chance. Grace says, yes, you fell, but I'm still here. Grace says, yes, you made mistakes, but I still love you. Grace breaks the chains that shame tries to wrap around your soul. Too many people live in the prison of shame. They replay their mistakes over and over. They let one failure define their future, and in doing so, they give the enemy more power than he deserves. That's not what God called you to do. Shame makes you hide. It makes you pull away from opportunities, relationships, and even from God Himself. It convinces you that you're unworthy of His love. But the truth is, God already knew your flaws when He called you, and He still chose you. You can't move forward if you're carrying shame. You've got to drop it. You've got to say, yes, I failed, but failure is not the end of me. Yes, I messed up, but I'm not living under that label anymore. That's the freedom grace offers. When shame tells you your story is over, grace reminds you it's just beginning. When shame tries to silence you, grace gives you your voice back. When shame tries to bury you, grace digs you out. So don't let shame chain you. Break free. Walk in grace. Because as long as you're chained to shame, you'll never step into the future God prepared for you. Failure always comes with a sting. You lose something, you break something, you miss out on something, and the pain feels unbearable. But pain is only wasted if you refuse to learn from it. God never allows you to go through something without planting a lesson inside it. The problem is too many people live in the loss instead of learning from it. They replay the moment over and over until it eats away at them. But living in the loss doesn't bring anything back. It only drains you of the strength to move forward. Every failure has a seed of wisdom buried inside it. If you can dig deep enough, you'll find what God was trying to teach you. Maybe it was patience. Maybe it was discernment. Maybe it was trust. But there's always something to take with you, even from the hardest situations. Think about it like this. When you touch a hot stove, the pain teaches you not to do it again. That's how life works too. Your mistakes aren't meant to destroy you. They're meant to teach you. And if you carry the lesson forward, you come out stronger than before. The danger is when you get stuck in the pain and never reach for the wisdom. You spend years crying over what happened instead of asking, what did this teach me? You waste the opportunity failure gave you. The truth is, loss is temporary, but lessons last forever. That wisdom will show up in your next decision, your next relationship, your next opportunity. It will protect you from making the same mistake twice. So don't live in the loss. Learn the lesson. Carry it forward. Because wisdom gained from failure is more valuable than anything success could ever teach you. One of the hardest parts of failure is dealing with people. People love to remind you of what you did wrong. They love to replay your mistakes, laugh at your pain, and whisper about your downfall. But here's the truth. People don't have the final say over your life. People didn't create you. People didn't call you. People didn't place purpose inside of you. So why are you giving them the authority to define you? Their opinion of you does not override God's promise for you. If you let people's words get in your head, you'll stay stuck in the very place God is trying to deliver you from. Because people will judge you by where you fell, but God sees where you're going. And His plan for you is not canceled because somebody else wrote you off. Some folks only see the failure, but God sees the comeback. Some folks only see the mistake, but God sees the miracle. Some folks only see the brokenness, but God sees the blessing. That's why you've got to tune out the noise and trust His voice. People might try to use your past against you, but God uses it as proof of His grace. Every time they bring up what you did, it's another reminder of how far you've come. Let their gossip fuel your gratitude. And let's be honest, people are fickle. They'll cheer you today and criticize you tomorrow. You can't build your identity on something that unstable. You've got to anchor yourself in the one who never changes. So when people try to define you by your failure, remind yourself they don't have the final say. God does, and His word always outweighs their opinion. When you go through failure, it feels permanent. It feels like the end. You start to think, this is just my life now. This is who I am. But the truth is, failure is not a life sentence. It's a season, and seasons change. Think about winter. It gets cold, dark, and harsh. But no matter how long winter feels, spring always comes. Failure works the same way. You may be in a season of loss right now, but it won't last forever. God never leaves you stuck in one place. The danger comes when you confuse a season with a lifetime. You start talking like it's over, walking like you've been defeated, and acting like there's no way forward. But you're not finished. You're just in the middle of your process. Every season has a purpose, even the ones that hurt. The season of failure humbles you, teaches you, and rose you in ways success never could. It prepares you for the harvest that's waiting on the other side. Don't let your temporary condition convince you of a permanent conclusion. This is not the end of your story. It's just one chapter, and chapters don't define books. They move the story forward. Sometimes God allows seasons of failure to prune things out of your life that don't belong. He'll strip away what you thought you needed so He can show you what's truly essential. It may hurt, but it's growth. So when you find yourself in the middle of failure, remind yourself it's just a season. It's not forever. And if you hold on long enough, you'll live to see the new season God is preparing for you. Sometimes God will let something fail because it was never meant for you in the first place. You thought that job was your future, but He shut the door. You thought that relationship was the one, but He ended it. You thought that plan was perfect, but it collapsed. And at the time, it hurt like crazy. But later, you realized God was protecting you. See, we only see a piece of the puzzle. God sees the whole picture. And sometimes failure is God's way of steering us away from disaster we can't see. That's why you can't always cry over closed doors. You don't know what He saved you from. If everything went the way you planned, you'd settle for less than what God has for you, because His thoughts are higher than your thoughts and His ways are higher than your ways. That failure you hated was just divine redirection. We call it rejection, but in reality, it's God's protection. You didn't lose, it just wasn't meant for you. The reason it didn't work out is because God's preparing something that will. You've got to learn to trust that when God says no, He's making room for a greater yes. When He closes one door, He's aligning you for the right one. You can't chase what He's already shut down. Failure is not always punishment. Sometimes it's mercy. It's God keeping you from attaching yourself to the wrong people, wrong places, or wrong opportunities. You thought you wanted it, but He knew it would have destroyed you. So when failure hits, don't just ask, "Why did this happen?" Ask, "What are you redirecting me toward, God?" Because behind every failure is a better future waiting to unfold. When you fail, the enemy loves to whisper, "See, you're finished. God can't use you anymore. You blew it." But that's a lie. Failure doesn't disqualify you from God's plan. It actually makes you more relatable, more authentic, and more dependent on His grace. The Bible is full of people who messed up. Moses killed a man. David committed adultery. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And yet God used them all to do incredible things. If He didn't disqualify them, why would He disqualify you? God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Your past mistake didn't cancel your calling. The gifts He placed in you are still there. The purpose He wrote over your life is still intact. Nothing you've done has the power to erase what He spoke over you. The enemy wants you to believe that your failure erased your future, but in reality, it positioned you to experience God's grace in a deeper way. Because until you've fallen, you don't fully understand the power of being lifted back up. Don't count yourself out just because you messed up. You're still in the game. You're still on the path. You're still chosen. God's not done with you, and He hasn't changed His mind about you. What you think disqualified you might actually be the very thing God uses to connect you with others. People don't relate to perfection. They relate to testimony. Your failure becomes your ministry when you allow God to redeem it. So, lift your head. Stop walking around like your life is over. You're not disqualified. You're just under construction, and God is still working on you. One of the most powerful truths about failure is this: the comeback is always greater than the setback. What looked like the end becomes the stage for your greatest rise. God never restores you back to the exact place you were before. He always brings you out stronger. Think about Job. He lost everything: his wealth, his health, his family. But when God restored him, He didn't just give Job what he lost, He gave him double. That's how God works. He turns your pain into promotion. The enemy thought he buried you, but all he did was plant you. And when you rise again, you rise with more strength, more wisdom, and more resilience than you had before. Failure is not your grave, it's your soil. Some of the most powerful people in history experienced devastating failure before their greatest success. They came back stronger, wiser, and more determined. Why? Because failure sharpened them in ways success never could. Your setback may have slowed you down, but it didn't stop you. It may have humbled you, but it didn't kill you. And if you're still breathing, you're still in the rue, running for the greatest comeback of your life. The comeback isn't just about proving people wrong, it's about proving God right. It's about showing the world that His grace is bigger than your mistake and His power is greater than your pain. So don't mourn the setback. Anticipate the comeback, because when God flips the script, your story will inspire everyone who thought it was over for you. Success feels good, but it doesn't always shape you. Failure, on the other hand, builds your character. It tests your resilience, humbles your pride, and shows you what you're really made of. Failure reveals the strength you didn't know you had. If everything always worked out perfectly, you'd never grow. You'd stay shallow, fragile, and entitled. But failure toughens you. It makes you dig deeper, fight harder, and lean more on God than on yourself. Character isn't built when life is easy. It's built when life is hard. It's built when you get knocked down and still choose to get up. It's built when you keep pressing forward even though you feel like quitting. Failure exposes your weaknesses, but it also develops your strengths. It teaches you humility, patience, and perseverance. Those qualities don't come from winning. They come from falling and rising again. The truth is, people respect character more than success. They don't admire you because you never failed. They admire you because you overcame. They're inspired not by your perfection, but by your persistence. Failure also makes you more compassionate. When you fall in yourself, you stop judging others so harshly. You learn how to extend grace because you've had to receive it. That's character at work. So don't resent failure. Embrace it as the trainer it is, because the character it builds in you will outlast any temporary loss. One of the biggest mistakes people make is quitting too soon. They fail once and they decide it's over. They face rejection and they give up on the dream. But you can't quit in the middle of the story. God is still writing, and the ending is better than the middle. Failure doesn't mean stop. It means keep going. It means adjust, learn, and move forward. Too many people pitch a tent in the valley when God never told them to stop walking. The valley is temporary. It's not your destination. When you quit in the middle, you rob yourself of the victory on the other side. You never see the reward for your persistence. You never discover how close you were to break through. The enemy loves to hit you hardest right before you win. He knows if he can get you to quit now, you'll never see the promise God has for you. That's why you've got to develop the grit to keep moving, even when you're tired, discouraged, and uncertain. Sometimes the only difference between winners and quitters is endurance. The winners didn't have fewer failures. They just refused to stop. They outlasted the pain. They pressed through the setback. Every step you take in the middle counts. Every prayer, every effort, every act of faith. It's building momentum. You may not see it now, but God is aligning everything behind the scenes. So don't quit in the middle. Keep going, because if you walk long enough, you'll see the finish line God already prepared for you. Failure can either drain you or drive you. It depends on how you handle it. Some people let it crush them, but others turn it into fuel. They let the pain push them to grow, to improve, and to prove that failure was just a stepping stone. Think about it like fire. Fire can destroy, but it can also refine. It can burn you, or it can forge you into something stronger. Failure works the same way. It can consume you, or it can fuel your future. Every great comeback story started with someone deciding, I'm not going to let this break me. I'm going to let it build me. That's the mindset you've got to adopt. Instead of asking, why me? Ask, what can I do with this? Instead of crying about what went wrong, say, how can I turn this into momentum? That's how failure becomes fuel. When you fail, you've got two options: sit in it or use it. Use it to push harder. Use it to dig deeper. Use it to trust God more than you ever have before. Failure gives you fire. It lights something inside of you that comfort never could. It creates a hunger, a determination, a drive that propels you forward. So don't waste your failure. Don't bury it. Don't hide from it. Turn it into fuel that powers you toward the destiny God designed for you. Faith is easy when everything is working. When the bills are paid, when the plan is flowing, when the doors are opening, anybody can say, I trust God. But real faith shows up when things fall apart. Faith is proven in failure. It's proven when you lose but still believe. It's proven when you fall but still trust. It's proven when everything goes wrong and you still lift your hands and say, God, I know you're with me. Failure strips away the illusion of control. It reminds you that you're not running the show, and in that moment, you've got a choice, panic or trust. That's when faith has to kick in. God never promised you a life without failure, but He promised He'd never leave you in it alone. Faith is believing that even when you don't understand, He's still working for your good. The strongest believers aren't the ones who never fell. They're the ones who fell and kept trusting anyway. They discovered a faith that wasn't tied to circumstances. It was anchored in God. Failure is the training ground for faith. Every time you choose to believe in the middle of a storm, your faith grows stronger. Every time you trust when it doesn't make sense, your roots go deeper. So don't despise failure. It's where faith gets tested, proven, and strengthened. And the kind of faith you build in the fire will carry you into victories you never thought possible. One of the most powerful truths about God is this: He takes the messiest parts of your life and turns them into miracles. What you thought would ruin you becomes the very thing that reveals His power. Your mistakes don't scare Him. Your failures don't shock Him. Your brokenness doesn't disqualify you. In fact, those are the ingredients He uses to perform His greatest work. People may look okay at your life and see a disaster, but God looks at it and sees a platform for His glory. He doesn't waste your pain, your failure, or your shame. He weaves it into your story in a way that brings beauty out of ashes. Sometimes the very thing you're most embarrassed about is the thing God will use to help someone else. Because people don't connect to perfection. They connect to your testimony. And your testimony is born out of your mess. The mess shows you your need for God. It reminds you that you can't do it alone. And when He steps in and turns it around, you can't take the credit. You've got to point back to Him. You don't need a perfect past to see a powerful future. You just need to surrender your mess to God, because when you do, He'll transform it into something that blesses not just you, but everyone connected to you. So stop hiding your mess. Hand it over. Let God turn what was meant to shame you into a miracle that will inspire generations. At the end of the day, no matter how big your failure feels, you've got to remember God is bigger. Bigger than the mistake you made, bigger than the opportunity you lost, bigger than the people who walked away, bigger than the shame you carry. Your failure may look massive to you, but compared to God, it's small. He's not intimidated by it. He's not overwhelmed by it. He's not scratching his head, wondering what to do with you. He already has the solution. When you magnify your failure, you shrink your faith. But when you magnify your God, you shrink your failure. Perspective matters. Stop staring at what went wrong and start focusing on the one who makes all things right. God's power is limitless. His mercy has no expiration date. His grace is bigger than your guilt. His love is greater than your loss. That's why you can trust Him even when you can't trust yourself. The enemy wants you to think it's over, but God says it's just the beginning. The enemy wants you to focus on what broke, but God wants you to focus on what He's building. Every failure is an opportunity to see God's greatness in action. Every setback is a stage for His power to shine. Every fall is a chance for His hand to lift you higher than before. So no matter how deep you've fallen, remember this: God is bigger. Bigger than your past, bigger than your pain, and bigger than your failure.